Well, hello and welcome back, everyone, to the show. This is the Jackson, Peter, and Nestlig show most of the time. So, there's me, Jackson. Then there's Peter, who is our host and co-host. And then we have Nestlig, who is one of the editors of my scripts. Welcome to the show, gang.
Hi, folks.
Hello. Yeah. So we're continuing along with and hopefully finishing today this video from the Hoover Institute, which I guess is kind of like the Prager University. It's not really a university or an institute. It's just a YouTube channel. Not entirely sure.
It always helps.
Interview and just like
it always helps if you call yourself a university. I mean,
it does. Makes you sound smart.
Yes.
You gotta wear glasses too, though. You gotta really sell it. You can't just call yourself learned. You gotta wear glasses.
Better?
How many minutes do we have left of the video?
I don't see anything now,
minutes.
But do I look better with glasses?
You look 10 IQ points higher, Peter.
Yeah, but I'm going to struggle pushing the right buttons, so let's not do that.
Let's see. In the side chat, we got Smitty and Jamie E and Savage Cobra and Vesuvian Doppelganger. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you.
Vesuvian Doppelganger already left before, so I don't see.
They might be around. So what YouTube does is if you type something in the side chat, then you are considered to be a participant. If you don't type for a long time,
they don't track you. They don't track you. All right. So I thought you can see even those that are ghosting.
No.
I was wrong.
No, people are watching and haven't participated in chat. You can't see their names.
All right.
Freedom Truth University. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You'd think if these people had scruples that they, wouldn't call themselves maybe think tank. That's fine. If you call yourself a think tank, no problem with that. But like, we all know what universities are, what their function is, and so pretending to be a university is just dishonest, especially when you produce in the case of like PragerU, just little videos that are mostly propaganda for capitalism or the right wing, or the Hoover Institute. Actually, I will say, there was a channel that was around for a little bit. They haven't put out anything in a long while now. The Gravel Institute, which again, not a university, it's a YouTube channel, but they were doing left-wing stuff. And their videos were decent for the most part. And then they put out a video about the conflict in Ukraine, which I guess sank their channel. Because they
deservedly.
Well, yeah, they tried pushing the whole the Ukrainians are Nazis narrative, and that just sank their channel. And I was kind of sad about that because, like, other than that one, their videos are pretty decent overall. I kind of like their stuff, but yeah, that they were done after that. So, the funny thing is, and what's kind of sad is it seems like when people on the left get called out for something, they just kind of are like, "Oh well, we got called out. I guess we'll pack it up." Whereas the right wing is like, "Nah, we're gonna keep going. More and more lies. We're gonna keep putting out." It's like, I appreciate that you have scruples and that you're like, okay, I made a mistake. I won't keep putting stuff out there. But like, if you don't learn from your mistakes and you just like drop off the map, then the like PragerU and these other conservative leaning institutions are just going to keep going. There's nothing stopping them. They're not going to quit. So, I've made mistakes on my channel. I've told videos before if I consider, if I was told that I made a mistake, or if I make a mistake, I'll put it in the description that like, hey, I messed up here. That happens, but you keep going. You learn from your mistakes and you move on. You don't just vanish. Right. Unless you do something terrible, I guess.
Speaking about learning from mistakes, Jackson, do you remember a long time ago we had, because you mentioned left wing, so we also should mention right wing, I think, to balance things out. We had Pastor Greg Locke on our channel.
You already did that. Yeah.
And during that interview, he said he wanted to talk to more prominent atheists, and you started messaging Arn to see whether or not we could set up a conversation between Greg Locke and Arn. And then
I never interacted with Greg Locke.
No. You were in the chat, and he said I want to talk to more prominent atheists, and you picked that up.
Maybe.
And
I don't think
during the show.
I don't think I would now. I don't.
No. But during the show,
all the stuff he's been accused of.
You messaged Arn, and you wanted to help set up a conversation between him and Arn, and then I think it was a week later when his daughter found him with his secretary doing unspeakable things on the couch in the church back room. So that never happened. A good friend of mine who also did the awesome documentary on Kent Hovind is now going to do a documentary on Greg Locke, McKinnon Mitchell. So I can't say what I know about the documentary, but trust me, this is going to be a good one. People will want to see that. So,
I mean, nothing. No one should debate Kent Hovind at this point. I think we all know what he's done, what he is, if not what he's done, what he has facilitated on his properties, and no one should debate him. I don't think anyone should debate Greg Locke either. He harassed and abused his ex-wife, and
I think he should debate somebody on his level, which makes no difference because you cannot find them.
I wouldn't watch that anyways, and I wouldn't recommend anyone watch that anyways. So at any rate,
or let him waste his time with flat earthers.
That would be
probably the only thing.
That would be the good thing to do. Have all of the flat earthers go after.
It's not just that he was having sex; it's while he was still married, so he was cheating on his wife with his secretary. That was the other thing.
And this secretary, by the way, was the one who screwed up my show twice. By not telling.
Well, that's not the only thing she screwed up.
Yeah, she was good in screwing up. Maybe that's why she's now Mrs. Locke.
Jeez. Oh well. Anyway, moving on from that, we are going to get back to our video. We are, I hope, going to finish it today.
How many minutes still left?
14 minutes are remaining. The next video was one that was actually requested by I think he goes by Bob Ingersoll on Twitter. I don't know if he's
thank you, Bob Ingersoll, because I hate Linux. I mean,
I've seen one thing with Linux a number of years ago, and that was his debate with Dawkins, and then I've seen a few tweets of his from time to time, and he does not impress me at all. So we'll be watching a video where he and Behe and Meyer, I think it's the three of them. I think it's Behe, Meyer, and Lennox are all talking about evolution, and I'm sure that's going to be just so enlightening. Just we're all going to learn so much from watching that video. Anyway,
what I want to mention a while ago when you mentioned these people put often these impressive titles on the name, like university and such. It reminded me on something that was discussed on the what's it called again? The peaceful science discourse forum, where they brought up a new long story short video where guess what he put on the first screen. This video was made with the help of 5 PhDs, end quote.
Of course he did. And he's probably right. Now, in fairness to him, he's probably right.
Yeah. But like no names, no titles, just 5 PhDs. That's it.
It's because this video is we're sitting down with some experts to talk about evolution. Experts in what? Well, we have a software engineer, a mathematician, and a philosopher. Okay, so you didn't pull any biologists. No. Okay. So, also, I want to point out with regard to this video is titled "The Mathematical Challenges to Evolution" or Darwin's Theory or whatever the heck it is. Something along those lines. Mathematical challenges to evolution. They have talked almost not at all about math in this entire video, and there are 14 minutes remaining. There's been almost no talk about math. There has been an allusion by Meyer to the waiting time problem, which we talked about why it's dumb and why nobody in genetics actually takes it seriously. But that's kind of it. Most of their talk has been like about Gelernter making up insane claims about how he thinks genetics works. Like you build a mouse and then you put hooves on it by accident or something. You know, and some other things like that. But the vast majority of this videos had nothing to do with math at all, right? They brought up no formulas, no actual problems within evolutionary theory, nothing, none of that. They brought up almost nothing. It's kind of sad. And in fact, fun fact, the next video in the Ancestors Tale series will talk about math a little bit, not to scare off any people, but it will talk a little bit about math. And I'll just tease you with that. You'll have to watch it. So, all right. We ready to jump right in and finish this video?
I'm completely ready. So let's hit the button.
All right, let's do it.
If minds are wholly dependent on brains, and brains on biochemistry, and biochemistry on the meaningless flux of the atoms, I cannot understand how the thought of those minds should have any more significance than the sound of the wind in the trees. Close quote.
Okay, so isn't that so that's the what is it called? The evolutionary argument against naturalism, isn't it? Right? Like if there's no soul, and our brain is just, or our consciousness is just like atoms, well, how can we trust our senses to be like truth discerning? And one thing I think this argument kind of fails to acknowledge is that truth has survival value, right? Not all truth, obviously, but there are truths about the world. There are facts we can discern that have survival value, right? Like if you can throw a spear, if you can judge correctly the distance from you to a deer and throw a spear to take out that deer, then your ability to assess distance has survival value. Your ability to tell if a fruit is poisonous or not has survival value, right? Lots of truths have survival value. You know, should I bend over in, you know, near the stream if it's murky and I can't really see into it? Am I in any danger? You know, all that sort of stuff. These all have truth values, and there is selection for being able to discern truth about the world, right? And that, I don't know.
To some extent, like of course we cannot pretend that we are perfect truth-seeking machines, right? Like
right.
There is all kinds of illusions and fallacies that humans are very easily fooled by.
But I think that kind of also defeats the argument, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
Like both one, truth seeking can be selected, but also humans are extremely prone to all sorts of different optical illusions, you know, and stuff like that, and pareidolia and all this. So it's like, I think that
we tend to rely mostly on like heuristics, right? Like making quick guesses based on limited data, and then making the best guess most of the time.
Right.
Yeah, like a noise in the bushes, so maybe a lion there or something like that. Like something, that way. Like a quick judgment.
Yeah. I think Alvin Plantinga is a extant philosopher who likes to push this argument, and of course, you know, C.S. Lewis pushed it back in the day. But yeah, I've never found it a particularly interesting argument. For the reasons we've cited. So
even if I were to accept the arguments like, oh, if my mind is like the product of matter and matter cannot be relied on, like, what's your solution then? I thought so there is a ghost in the shell.
Yes.
And that's somehow, well, how does it solve the problem exactly? How?
Because God made it. God made the ghost and then put it in you, and that's how that's.
Yeah, I recently watched the debate between Eric Hernandez and Arn Ra again about whether or not a soul exists. And Arn brings up the God helmet. This is an experiment where you can induce signals into the brain in order to make people have experiences. And Arn was pressing him, if the soul is immaterial, then how can this material device that is putting signals into a material brain, how is that affecting an immaterial soul? He never got an answer for that.
Well, and
All
there's
deflection.
there's a long philosophical line of a pedigree of like, the soul acts through the brain. So like the brain is like, the medium to the soul or whatever. And Descartes, you had like, it's the pineal gland, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the seat of the soul, right? Well, it's like, okay, by this point, we're working, neuroscience is being worked out, and these theists have this claim about the brain is the medium to the soul, and if you injure the brain, you can injure the soul. Okay, all right, fine. Let's just take that claim at face value. Okay, let's say, yeah, that's true. Where, which processes, how, which cells, which metabolic compounds are the ones that are interacting with the soul? How is this happening? Which electrons, which protons, neutrons, what proteins, what RNA, which materials? There's no answer.
If atoms or a mere matter is not reliable, like how do we know that this ghost substance is reliable?
Right. That's another fair point. They're just assuming that the ghost substance came from God. It was put, and that's another fair point. Yeah. How do we know it's not a committee of trickster gods or something like that, right?
The way Hernandez puts this, because he goes a lot further than that. He claims that thinking doesn't happen in the brain. Thinking happens in the soul. So there are no thought processes in the brain at all.
So when like MRIs are taken of people like thinking, like about to do, what does that, in his mind, what does that mean?
He never answered that question. That was something that Arn pressed him on as well. He said, so all the neuroscientists on the planet are wrong and you are right, but you can't tell me what the mechanism is that would cause the brain to influence a soul, because the soul still gets influenced. It's mind-boggling and it's frustrating to watch.
I would like to push a book here. It is titled The Big Picture by Sean Carroll, the physicist, not the biologist. The Big Picture, and I think actually there's like two different biologists named Sean Carroll. But anyways, the physicist Sean Carroll, he wrote this book, The Big Picture, and he talks about how the universe works, everything from like, atoms to galaxies. He talks about the evolution and origin of life. He talks about superstition, all this stuff in this book. One thing that was especially powerful for me with the book is that he talks about physicists have an extraordinarily good idea of how atoms work, right? Of how atoms work on, at certain distances and how they interact with each other. Physicists, can predict like the movements and interactions to like, a whole bunch of significant figures. It's crazy. So, given that, why is there no evidence for ghosty things? Why is there no hard evidence for telekinesis, right? Or the soul, or anything else like that? Any sort of extrasensory, perception or what have you? There's none, and there would be, but the way that atoms work just doesn't allow it. Right, not based on our knowledge of how, based on the knowledge that physicists have accrued of how atoms work, and that was an especially powerful point for me in that book.
Yeah. So. Also, I should just also point out that like this subject, like the soul, the body, and the reliability of our senses is somewhat unrelated to the topic that this
Very
video
true.
is supposedly trying to discuss.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we can move on. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, also, Peter, can you, like, I'm now looking at 3 separate pains, like myself,
Oh yeah,
Jackson.
we need Peter on the big screen.
Yeah. There we go.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
All right, we can keep going.
Isn't consciousness the first question we have to answer?
Not mine.
Why?
Totally wrong.
It's not even the first question I would think of asking. Why does it seem so very compelling to you or C.S. Lewis? Consciousness, yeah, it's one of those things. It's certainly true that I'm conscious. I have my doubts about you and these two guys here, but those doubts really don't matter a whole lot. I'm prepared to welcome my friends as automata. Doesn't matter to me.
He's not onto a point, or he's onto something that's just uninteresting.
I'm not sure I understand the point. I mean, let's say...
Does this make any sense to you?
Makes sense to me. This is what bothered Thomas Nagel, and why he's become a skeptic of neo-Darwinism, is that minds are real things. And if you can't give an account of where they came from or what they do,
I think it's kind of funny.
Self-defeating.
Pause for a
then
moment.
You end up.
So I think it's kind of funny that Berlinski here. I happen to agree with Berlinski, which is weird to say. He's like, yeah, no, this isn't really an interesting question. And the interviewer, who is religious, as we established in the previous episode, he just like completely, deflects, dodges, right?
It's like if he doesn't get the answer, then he goes to somebody else, basically.
Right. Yeah, he like jumps to Steve because he knows Steve is is also religious. So
please save me, Stephen. Please save me. Come on.
Right.
catch the ball for me. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. That was all I wanted to say.
All right.
In a really incoherent
Okay, to
philosophy.
Gelernter to break the tie, because his latest book was on consciousness.
I have to agree. I am also an admirer of Nagel, and the question of consciousness is unsolved. You can argue whether it's important or not. I think most people intuitively believe it's important. I think they're right. But the question of the origins of life and the origins of consciousness are the intellectual bookends of modern science and philosophy, and we can't say much about either of them.
We can't characterize either of them, and if we can't characterize them, we're not really in a position to explain how they emerged. That seems to me a prior commitment, to be able to say what we wish to explain. Someone says, I'm deeply puzzled about consciousness. Everybody says that. It's a very fashionable thing. They say it in teen Vogue, for heaven's sakes. But I would like to have a better sense of what is prompting the puzzlement. I don't have that. I can't sit in your seat when you're sitting there, so I can't experience your sensations when you're having them. Well, all right, so what? Why is that intelligible from a scientific or a philosophical point of view as a pressing issue?
If you say most of your friends happen to be automata, we'll turn you into an automata and you'll get a $50 coupon right now where you can spend in Florence. Would you accept the deal or not?
$50 for
Yeah.
my consciousness?
Yeah, for you
Bist
becoming
du
an
verrückt?
automata. Excuse me.
No, bist du verrückt?
Well, look,
Oh, but now you're just dickering over the price.
Yeah, exactly. But that's true of all intellectual discussions. We're always talking about the price. The price seems to me very low to be puzzled. There are lots of things that are puzzling in the world. Some of them we understand, some of them we don't.
But they value your consciousness.
We aren't even. This is so completely removed from the point of the discussion. They're talking about consciousness. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're not responding to it, folks. There's nothing to respond to. They're not saying anything.
It reminds me of a funny conversation like that Bill Nye and Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson had like on a panel, and Bill Nye was like, "Oh, am I thinking, or am I thinking that am I thinking?"
That was the storytelling of science back in like 2018 or something like that. I remember that one. It was interesting. They pulled like. It was like Dawkins, Nye, Tyson, Lawrence Krauss. They were all on the same stage together. It was an interesting little event.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, we can keep going.
Fun fact: that event is where I got several clips from for the intro of my show. I still have that entire thing somewhere. Yeah, was a good show.
At least at $50.
Yeah, $50 for my consciousness.
At least we've established a floor.
We can go up from there.
We're all saying it's a mystery, but we're framing the mystery in different
That's
terms.
exactly right. It's a puzzle. I'm not even persuaded it's a mystery in the sense which the structure of a natural language is.
But whatever it is, it's valuable to you.
To me, maybe not to you. Okay. Just as yours is valuable to you, but not entirely to me. But we have to be very skeptical about these claims of profundity because when examined, they don't always remain what they seem. They don't always remain that.
Gentlemen, let me name three names.
Are they going to approach a point
that all but remade modern consciousness? I think the three of you would agree with that formulation when you hear the names. 19th and early 20th century. Karl Marx, no longer taken seriously. A few faculty lounges in American universities. Fundamentally, Karl Marx no longer taken seriously. Sigmund Freud.
Pause for a moment. Okay, Freud less so because but like Freud, we all know why Freud's not taken as seriously in today's world, right?
Or maybe he's going to say, Freud. Oh yeah, he's.
Okay, but Marx is taken very seriously. His books are still read and taken seriously, and are part of a major discussion about how to do capitalism. What do you mean he's not taken seriously? What are you talking about? What does that even mean?
Like, I think I may have an answer to that because a lot of people, and I've seen Prager University do this, they think that the U.S. is the only country on Earth. So if it's not taken seriously there, then that is
okay. That's fair.
The global standard. So that might be what he's trying to convey. He's still wrong.
Yeah.
But
I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody agrees with everything Marx says, probably. But just to say that, that nobody takes him seriously is nonsense. But yeah, you're probably right, Peter. It's probably because the U.S. is the only country. All the other countries are not real.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
We only. The funny thing is, I'm certain if you poll average American citizens, what's the difference between socialism, and communism, and things like that you get abysmal answers because our media is paid, right, to pretend that these are exactly the same thing and that communism, but socialism in any form means that the government's coming to take away all of your items. You have to give up all your possessions, and it's like, why do you think that? And if you even attempt to talk about socialism or something like that, or maybe not even socialism, if you talk about hey, maybe we could go a little bit easier on the capitalism, people get apoplectic, right? If you try at all. So okay, anyway,
let's get to Freud.
Yeah, we keep going on. Freud, yeah.
Fascinating, a few interesting insights, but psychology has now moved so far beyond Freud that at universities across the country, they're renaming the departments of psychology and brain sciences. We're scanning brains, all right.
Uh-huh.
And now we have Darwin, and the three of you are taking him down too.
Lol, LMAO.
What does this mean for the way people think about the world? Is this...
They are a bit,
so I don't think...
a bit too late on that.
Yeah, I don't think Darwin has ever been taken down in the way Freud has. It doesn't even come close. Freud has been... His ideas have been proven demonstrably wrong and harmful in some cases even.
Yeah.
So that hasn't happened with Darwin. Sure, Darwin made some mistakes because of things that he couldn't have known at the time.
Right.
So he may have been wrong on a few things. Overall, though, he was pretty correct and pretty accurate, and a lot of his ideas still hold water today. So no, that's not a real comparison.
Yeah, he got the the basics right.
Yeah.
He got natural selection. He got that there was variation, natural selection, and that led to speciation. Right. And that's the bare bones basics. And for his time, that's great. Obviously much more work has been done on it now. Worked out to much
and
greater
again,
degrees.
the scientist has moved on a lot since then. So
yeah, but
going
the general
after him is like going after Newton, or like it's all right. You can do that, but
Darwin's general idea.
Let's say we live in the 21st century.
Yeah, Darwin's general idea was never refuted. It only got confirmed more and more through different lines of science. So,
and these guys even accept that. All of them accept natural selection, right? Variation, natural selection leading to speciation. All of them sitting there. I mean, well, I don't know about Gelernter per se, but at the very least, Berlinski and Meyer have admitted in writing that they are fine with evolution up to speciation. Meyer, and actually, okay, I do want to say this. Meyer says in Darwin's Doubt that he considers the phylum the kind, basically, right? Right, guys? I mean, he argues for that. He argues that all mollusks share a common ancestor, but mollusks do not share a common ancestor with arthropods. And all chordates share a common ancestor, but not with mollusks or arthropods, etc. Because he argues in his book, in Darwin's Doubt, that the body plan cannot evolve. And according to him, according to Meyer, the body plan is equated with the phylum. And we talk about why that doesn't make any sense, but just bear with me. Now, I had a chat over Twitter with Jonathan McClatchy this past week, which was very funny to watch because he tried wading into embryology and PZ jumped on him. So that was fun. But the other thing that McClatchy said before he vanished, as he inevitably does in Twitter conversations, he never sticks around very long, is he said Stephen Meyer does not accept phylum level common ancestry, and neither does McClatchy. So I asked McClatchy, so Darwin's Doubt is wrong according to Stephen Meyer? He did not respond. I just thought it was very funny. But also, if Meyer does not accept phylum level common ancestry, then that means the argument he made about the body plan, which he equates with phylum, being the demarcation for common ancestry, then even he doesn't believe that. He wrote a book he doesn't believe or buy, right? Just saying.
The only reason why they use phylum, the word phylum at all, is because it's associated with the Cambrian, and that's it.
Right.
That's the only reason.
Right. So I just want to point out that these guys are dishonest hacks, and sometimes they'll accidentally say a truth. They'll accidentally admit that they don't buy their own garbage. So just want to throw that out there. Anyway, all right, we can keep moving.
He won't go down easily.
No one has taken down Freud. His value
really?
doubles every decade.
I'm with David on
you
that
are?
one.
I'm just wrong about
Freud
that.
rises in my estimation.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, the
What do you
fact is that
mean?
Feminists in the 1970s were outraged because of something he said or didn't say in a political way. It has nothing to do with the value of his writing.
But I'm right at 2 out of
what?
3. Marx.
Hold on a second. Hold on. They think that psychologists value Freud? Somebody grab Shannon Q and bring her in here. We need to tell her that actually Freud is good.
Well,
I know very little about psychology, but yeah.
To be honest, they did say he rose, but not because of his writings. So I think they're talking about other personal opinions that have nothing to do with psychology. Maybe
he's like a meme at this point. He's a meme, right? Like you see him, you see people making jokes about him for the what's your relationship like with your parents? because it's everything you think is about like your mother. It's you want to replace your father and all that sort of jazz. And no, 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 no. That is not considered a serious hypothesis anymore.
Nope.
Oh.
Okay, continue.
Someone tell Shannon that Freud is back. Apparently, yeah.
That's going to drive Shannon up the wall.
I'll tweet at her right now.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Okay.
I mean,
all right, we can keep going.
Darwin, certainly with Marx and Darwin.
Marx is kind of a windbag. Let's agree on that.
Kind of bastard person.
Yeah, he didn't bathe a whole lot.
A windbag and a bastard in
And he
himself.
certainly had no sense of style. Darwin is a different case.
I think you're onto something to group them together, because you've talked about how Darwinism, David talked about how Darwinism has become the foundation of a worldview. And if you look...
Okay, I can't let this go. Marx had no style. Can we ask who gave you clothing advice for this show? Talking about style. Sorry. If you're going to go to ad hominems, then have a good look at yourself. I'm not pretending to have style. People who have seen me know that I may not have style. Sorry.
I mean, what is style?
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, and if you don't have style, does it mean that the work you are in is even less important, or does that? How does that even come into the picture? Having style.
Well, evolution is wrong because Darwin didn't have style. Checkmate, atheist.
Yeah, it's one of the dumbest arguments ever.
He wore like safari clothes because he was out in the Galapagos. So therefore, evolution wrong.
Okay, so we shouldn't bring up Ian Juby, who dressed like Indiana Jones and never got anywhere other than his immediate surroundings in Canada.
In general.
Yeah, I
just think he shouldn't be brought up in general.
I'm so happy he's going back to train spotting and model trains. I think that's maybe his expertise, and he could say things about it. So yeah, that's a good thing.
That are probably true. Yeah,
that's a good thing. Okay, continue.
All right.
Look at the questions that they address. Darwin tells us where we came from. Marx has a utopian vision of the future, and Freud tells us what to do about our guilt. And between the three of these great materialistic thinkers of the 19th century and early 20th century, they form the basis of a kind of comprehensive materialistic worldview. They answer all the same questions that traditional Judeo-Christian religion has addressed. And so it's understandable when we're talking about some of the intense opposition that Darwin skeptics often face, that it's understandable when you realize that you actually it makes sense because you're challenging a fundamental plank in the worldview.
So I'd actually like to point out something about this. I'd like to point out something. There's a quote from I believe it's Ernst Mayr, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it's something to the effect of part of the reason that Darwin was so disliked in his own day was he didn't go through the philosophers, all the famous philosophers throughout the years to derive evolutionary theory, right? He didn't argue against Descartes, and he didn't argue against Plato, and whomever else. He used a completely different method to derive his understanding about the world than Aristotle and Descartes and all the other older philosophers did. Right? He used the method of science to figure it out. And now, obviously, science wasn't as built up in Plato's day, but it's not a worldview, because worldviews or religions, these political ideas, these are like set in stone, and sure, you can change them and you can have changes in your worldview, but science is continually updated with new data. You're constantly fact checking things and and updating your ideas, collecting new data, and that is informing you more about the world. You are getting an increasingly accurate view of the world. That's precisely the opposite of what philosophies or religions do. Now, obviously you can search for truth in both of those fields, of course. No one would argue otherwise, but they don't exist to do that. Like the core message of like Christianity, for instance, is a set of tenets. Those tenets aren't going to be updated. And regardless of whether or not they're true, those are the tenets themselves, right? You can believe them on faith, or you can, not accept them, right? That's not true of science. In science, when you write a paper detailing some experiment, you have to provide how you did that experiment, so that if someone comes along and says, well, I don't agree with you, you can say, okay, well, here's how I did it. You can do it yourself. Now, the reason that nobody takes Meyer and Berlinski and Gelernter and all these other guys seriously with regard to evolution is they're never going to do that. They are never, ever going to do their own experiments to verify the papers that they quote critique and the ideas that they critique. They're never going to try to recreate experiments. They're never going to try to become experts in like paleontology or comparative anatomy or something like that, so they can actually do the work and put out their own papers. Never, ever. And they have to pretend that they do. They pretend that they do, right? They read articles and they, will write their own stuff, like with the waiting time problem, but they're not doing experiments or making observations to verify that these things are actually real. They make bad assumptions, they write these bad papers, and they try to submit them to journals that won't check the biology, but they'll check the math. And it's all part of the reason why no one takes them seriously. That's just all part of the same reason.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Again, I also need to quote.
Speaking about being taken seriously, we have a question in the chat from Vesuvian Doppelganger, who might want to address. If science is getting more accurate,
I don't care.
When does evolution get discarded?
Peter, no. Nope. Wrong.
I
what were
already
you saying, Nestle?
I already answered.
I was just saying that again we are not addressing the topic that is purported in the video, right?
And again, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
All right, we can keep going. Yeah, we're almost to the end.
Just equate their worldview of scientific materialism with the practice of science itself. And when you challenge one of the thinkers that supports that worldview, you're going to get a very kind of emotive reaction, and that's often what happens.
Last question
like you
here.
guys
I'm going
do?
to quote David Gelernter's essay one final time. Darwin now poses a final challenge. Whether biology will rise to this last one as well as it did to the first when his theory upset every apple cart remains to be seen. How cleanly and quickly can the field get over Darwin and move on? Striking sentence. This is one of the most important questions facing science in the 21st century, close quote. Is it generational? Does a whole generation of biologists have to die before the field gets over Darwin? What's going to happen here?
Might
What?
be generational at the very best.
At
I
the
mean,
best.
I think that would be a great outcome, is to have the old guard die. But you know, religion is imparted more than anything else by the parents to the children. And the young people have been brought up as little Darwinists. I mean, kids I see running around New Haven are all Darwinists. Anyway, the students in my class are all Darwinists. So
No,
these guys.
No, hold on.
No.
Not a single person at your university is a Darwinist. I promise you that. Not one of them. None of them are Darwinists. Because all of the Darwinists really are dead, and they have been dead for a very long time.
Unless you're in Oxford and you're like over 80 years old or something.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. If you're like 90 years old, maybe. Well, No, okay. Well, the Neo-Darwinian synthesis came out in like 1930.
Mm-hmm.
So you really would have to be like over
yeah.
90 years old at this point.
I
to
like
be-
the only ones who call themselves Darwinists, like even Dawkins is actually a neo-Darwinist at least.
Right.
Like, but,
Yeah.
but he calls himself that way. But yeah.
Yeah, he does call himself that. He also writes stuff, which his argument is like everything is kind of a version of Darwinism. And he would even write. He wrote that essay. What is it? Universal Darwinism, I think was the title of it. And like, no, Darwinism just refers to natural and sexual selection. So a lot of things fall under Darwinism, but obviously not everything. And it's you can't classify everything in evolution as Darwinism. Now you can say maybe everything is at some point subject to natural selection. Okay, maybe. I don't even know if that's necessarily true. But even if it is, I still don't think it's fair to say everything is Darwinism, because obviously genetic drift, endosymbiosis, epigenetics, all these things are non-Darwinian processes. So I don't know. Suffice to say, no one at the university or alive today is probably a Darwinist. Everyone, neo-Darwinism started in the 1930s, so which I don't like labels. I don't like labels, so I think it'd be really weird
There's
to
an
hear
option.
someone refer.
Well,
There's an option, Jackson, because I've had this conversation several times. Because
What do you mean?
What I do for fun is talk to creationists. If we just, instead of calling people Darwinists, calling them intellectually honest people who go by the data instead of propaganda, then we would be along the right lines. And then but they'll never adopt that because they can't.
Well,
the
they don't
moment
agree
the
with
moment
it,
you
though, so
the
of
moment
course
you
they
start pointing out that they do not have any data to back up their position, that's when they get annoyed.
Yeah.
And send you papers on how a blind woman regained her sight through prayer, as I forwarded to you, which doesn't say that the prayer did it. It only acknowledges that there was prayer and there was some kind of spontaneous healing,
Right.
which occurred at...
I've been thinking about that article, and I think an analogy for it, Peter, would be like, woman gets healed after eating hamburger.
Yeah.
You know, because that's basically the same level of claim, right?
Yes.
There was prayer before she was healed. Okay, she ate a hamburger for lunch before, she got healed. So, okay, therefore the hamburger was like, no, come on. None of that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, we have Prophet of Zod in the chat.
Yes.
If they're not Darwinists, then why do they worship Darwin?
Famous people come here.
Well, you know what? I guess I can't really speak for that or to that, because I was reading Darwin just earlier this week. I was reading chapter 12, which is the second biogeography chapter in Origin of Species. Fun fact, you know what? Actually, the biogeography stuff in Origin of Species is really neat, and it's again a whole nother topic that creationists don't even talk about, and I wish they would, because it is really cool. But whatever.
Unless they are talking about like intercontinental ballistic marsupials.
You're right. Which, for anyone who's not aware, creationists really did propose that marsupials got to Australia because they were on volcanoes that erupted and the flying rock transported them all the way to Australia. Yes, they really did say that.
Which we all know is entirely plausible and possible, because you wouldn't get killed if that would happen to you.
It's logical, plausible, probable.
Yeah. I heard a new name.
Right.
I heard a new name. Logical, plausible, popsicle. I think that's a lot more accurate.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's keep going.
More about it than I do. I'm not hopeful.
No, he really doesn't.
Well, I think
they do not
Darwin
know
is
more about it than you
eternal.
do.
Because it's
Eternal.
eternal. The name is eternal. The idea is eternal. The belief, the commitment, they're all eternal. The theory will disappear. And good riddance to a bad theory. But no matter
Excuse me,
what...
it was a beautiful theory.
All right, it's a beautiful theory. Whatever it is, it will disappear. But whatever replaces it will be called Darwinian. No doubt about that. No matter
I just
what
want to point out that them saying this, oh, the scientists are going to abandon this any day now. They've been saying this for 30 years now, at least. The intelligent design guys have been saying this for 30 years now, at least.
And any day.
And
It
this
starts to sound like
day.
it really starts to sound like a mental patient being like, I'm going to escape. I'm going to get out of here any day now. Any day.
How old is this video,
thing.
Jackson? Over a decade?
Well, this was just a few years old.
No,
this came out just a few years ago, like 2016 or 2015, something like that. It was just a few years ago.
that is almost a decade. Well, closer.
No, that's like that's okay, fine, 7 or 8 years, something like that. Okay,
Yeah,
that's fair. But I mean, even still, but they've been doing this for so long, and it's just so I don't know. It makes me think of like a mental ward patient.
In all fairness, they have been saying that Jesus will come back for a lot longer than that.
For 2,000 years.
Yeah, so
that's fair. That's very true. I can't argue with that. Yeah. Okay.
We're still watching.
Smitty just said the same thing.
Yeah, we're still
Smitty
watching
just said the same thing.
a PragerU affiliated video, so it's safe to say that they're going to say this for the next 2,000 years, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, Smitty says at least this failed prediction isn't as old as apocalyptic predictions. Very true.
Exactly.
Smitty, very true. Okay, all right, let's keep going.
When a heresy emerges in the tides of time, it's always called a Christian heresy. This will be a Darwinian heresy. But that legacy, that commemorative legacy, will never disappear. It's part of the history of the subject. Just like Newton will not disappear.
Just like Jesus will not disappear.
But Newton wasn't wrong about everything.
See, I'm prepared for that one.
He wasn't wrong about everything. A lot of the ideas that he presented were correct. As with Darwin, a lot of the ideas he presented were correct. That's why no one's literally no one is suggesting we throw out all of Newton. No one is suggesting we throw out all of Darwin, because natural selection is not going to be overturned, right? I just they're just so dumb. They're all just so dumb. They have no idea what they're talking about. They present themselves as experts. None of them have any relevant credentials, and they're heralded as these like wise contrarians battling the consensus. Where's someone to represent the consensus? Where's our biologist? Why is there no one here who has a degree in biology? Because you won't find one.
No, and it's pretty hard to overturn something that you can actually sit down and see happen in real time. So
yeah, and the number of like side swipes and deflections that they have to go through to be like, okay, here's an experiment where you take there's a famous one, I think it was done at Cambridge, where it's like a bacterial plate, right? They seeded this auger, which is increasingly antibiotic, at like these different areas, and they seed both sides of it with bacteria, and they watch as the bacteria increasingly develops resistance to the antibiotics. That's freaking evolution. That is natural selection acting on variations.
You can even see the phylogenetic trees almost on the growth pattern.
And you show this to these guys. You say, look, this is what Darwin was talking about. This is evolution, natural selection in action, right here before your very eyes. And they go, no. That's not actually evolution. We all accept that micro evolution or that variation happens, but we don't accept Darwinian evolution. No, this is Darwinian evolution right here. This is it. It's right here. Now, if you want to, say like, epigenetics is not Darwinian evolution, or I don't know what else is punctuated equilibrium is not Darwinian in its original traditional sense. Macromutation is not originally, or is not Darwinism. There are lots of things in evolution that are not Darwinian, that are not Darwinism. But isn't that artificial selection? Well, I mean, I guess you could say that. You could also show them something like, the peppered moth experiment, which very famously, again, showed within a human lifetime natural selection, right? Birds picking off moths of certain colors, where you could show them the soapberry bugs, where these oriental plants were brought to the U.S., and then the soapberry bugs in Florida adapted their beak lengths to be able to feed on the new fruits.
But Jackson, they are still moths. They are
right,
still
they're still
finches.
moths, they're still finches, still soapberry bugs, still bacteria, whatever it is. But that's the deflection, right? That's the deflection, is they're saying yes. If you say this is evolution, they say yes, but. So they acknowledge it's evolution. And they have to add a new piece of misinformation, a new argument to say, well, yes, you're correct. That is, in fact, evolution, but it doesn't get you to your point because some other reason. That's what they have to do. Right? And then you have to move on to the next thing and say, okay, well, yeah, that's evolution, but that's not speciation. Okay, well, here's speciation happening. Okay, fine. That's that's natural selection and speciation. But, where's the evidence of one of a new genus coming into existence? Well, we have to look at the fossil record, but here you have a relatively decent record of these species diversifying and diverging, becoming a new genus. Okay, oh, all right, fair, you got that. But and it just keeps going up and up and up and up. And that's why Meyer has to stop at the phylum, because you finally found a place where you don't have this great record, you have a lot of gaps, and now he can finally push his God argument is in those little gaps of the fossil record of squishy things at the start of the Cambrian. That's how far back he has to go to actually make his argument. It's sad. It really is just sad. You could just say, well, if you've gotten this far, why don't you just keep going the rest of the way? Right?
Well, skipping over the first mammals of the Eocene.
Right. That's right. He really did say that, folks. So, all right, we can keep going.
Yeah, moving on.
Because I read David Gelernter's essay very carefully. and of course, he based it on your work and your work.
Several
times.
But
as this David says, look, there's a range of physical phenomena, very big things, planets, stars. Newton isn't too good at that. Very tiny things, quantum mechanics, tiny particles we can't see. He's not too good at that. But this huge range, Newton is perfectly predictive. It fits,
yeah, exactly.
It comports flawlessly with 98% of human experience.
That's true.
And Darwin doesn't.
You have to go farther.
Are you stupid?
Oh, I do?
But you're right.
I think what David Berlinski is getting at is
no, he is stupid.
Please help me with
If Darwin, the first chapter of Origin of Species was about artificial selection, right? Now, Darwin was obviously just saying, look, here's stuff that humans have been doing for thousands of years, and I'm using this. Now, imagine that nature is doing the selecting, but it's the same principle. We use evolution, artificial selection, to get crops and cows and dogs and goats and horses. It's the same process, just with a human instead of nature. Does he think that no,
Jackson,
he probably
that's
doesn't think.
just,
Let me
that's
stop
just
there.
intelligent design if humans do it. That is they see that
Bacteria adapting to antibiotics. Bacteria adapting to antibiotics. That is natural variation, unconscious, it's unconscious variation, unconscious selection, right? You have to have these you have to have variants of enzymes, which of course is due to variations in the genes, to be able to get around these antibiotics.
Yeah. But then they will either say one of two things. They will either say, oh, it's a broken version of the original or something like that. Or they will say, or they will actually suggest that it's actually a guided process for some reason.
So like carbapenem, for instance, is one of the beta-lactam antibiotics. But carbapenemases, right, had to be evolved by bacteria in response to the usage of carbapenems in medicine. So these bacteria did not have carbapenemases until humans were using carbapenems en masse to treat various bacterial infections. And now they have them. They've evolved them and then, of course, passed them horizontally amongst each other. And it's like, that's evolution. It's that easy. And it should be really easy to understand. It's not simply a matter of that, like, the prophets of evolution have spoken and the rest of us just kind of fell in line. It's like, it's really easy to comprehend. It really is. It is not hard. They make it hard. Because they're just dishonest. They're getting paid big bags with dollar signs on it to lie. That's all there is to it. They're just lying. Well, except Gelernter. He might just be stupid. I don't know. Anyway, we can keep going.
Darwinism has filled a niche in our intellectual life that is necessary. You've got to give some kind of account of where all these wonderfully intricate systems we call living organisms came from. And the fundamental commitment of Darwinism is some kind of bottom-up materialistic account where the molecules get more complex and form more complex molecules in cells, and the cells compete to form more complex organisms. So now what we're getting is post-neo-Darwinian theories of evolution that are trying to provide new mechanisms that will account for the things that the Darwinian mechanism doesn't account for.
So even you who bear the scars of abuse from Darwinists say, Darwin may have been mistaken in his answers, but he was...
What? Even you who bears the scars of...
Well, I wanted to see... Well,
what scars?
Let's hear him finish that statement.
Asking invaluable
Let's hear him finish that statement.
He's asking invaluable questions, but I think he got it wrong. I think all Darwinians, in the broad sense, get it wrong. They're trying to explain something very, very complex in terms of bottom-up, undirected processes. And what we see in life...
Okay, we can pause it. Okay, yeah, no, I really don't understand what that meant. We said he's borne the scars of... Does he mean like he's been attacked by evolution supporters? Because I mean, I guess that's true. He has, because he's an idiot and a liar. But I mean, otherwise, I don't know what that was a reference to, I guess. But yeah, complexity does emerge bottom up, right? Complexity in nature does not emerge top down; it emerges bottom up. You get crystal formation, right? If you think about something simple like crystals, right? Crystals are formed from like these molecular motifs that just repeat endlessly. And you get cool shapes with them. You get a variety of different shapes like octagons, and you get cubes and pyramids and all sorts of stuff. That's all bottom up. That's molecules unconsciously being arranged as a result of their molecular properties into certain shapes. There's nothing to do with design. And we know this is also true for organisms. When you have mutations, which everyone has a couple hundred mutations at least, and these very, very slightly affect your genes. You would hope mostly in pretty small ways. And then these cause very slight changes in proteins, which cause very slight changes in functions, and then that can be selected. Is the organism better or worse at doing something because of these minor variations? That's all evolution is. And again, it's really easy to understand for most people, but these guys are paid to lie about it. So, there's that. Anything you guys want to add?
Yes, because this is one of the things that especially creationists like to point out, that some people can be identified by giving certain signals. Can we point out that the hand signal currently on screen by creationists is seen as the sign of a Freemason. In later times, it's also been identified as the sign of the Ku Klux Klan. So,
well,
I've never heard
it's a normal hand signal. I mean, I've even
it
done
is
that,
a normal hand signal, but I'm just seeing people. If astronauts would make that sign, it would be the sign of a Freemason, and therefore we never landed on the
Right.
moon. So,
right, yeah.
just trying to point out the double
Yes,
standard.
Stephen Meyer is part of the Freemason Society.
Have a good look, and then draw your own conclusions.
Yeah.
Right?
Anyway.
That's what they say. Let's continue.
Mm-hmm.
Complex miniature machines, complex information processing systems, digital code. These are things that bear the hallmark of mind, and they suggest rather
they
a
don't.
top-down instead of a bottom-up approach. So I'm sure people committed to the materialistic view
So
of
let's
things
pause for a moment.
will continue to...
I'm sorry. I have to break back in so fast. No, they don't actually. If you look at like phototransduction, for instance, which is the process by which light comes into your photoreceptors and then is transmitted to your nerves, if someone designed that, I would slap them. It is a stupid design. You have a bunch of repurposed membrane proteins which you have to stack. You have to stack like thousands and thousands of these proteins in your photoreceptors, and then pass that signal along by like hyperpolarizing a membrane, and then depolarizing a membrane, and then you have to pass that to one type of nerve, and then it passes it to another type of nerve, and then to another type of nerve. Like, who would do that? Why would you make such... Go ahead.
I don't know. I was just saying, like slapping like Will Smith slapped Chris Rock.
Yes, right. It's like, why would you do that? Why would you make such a ridiculously overcomplicated process? It makes no sense. If you did that for a company, you'd get fired, right? And that's always like the joke about, oh, things are complex. Yeah, things are overly complex. They are Rube Goldberg machines, and our body is filled with them. All of our like transduction pathways, like messaging between cells, involves like 10 different enzymes. And these guys go, yeah, that's because it's too complex to evolve. Like, no, it's because each protein has like a very small role, and you have to have the cobbling together of like these different systems that all have to work together to pass this one little message along. And if you were like a designer, why not just make it one enzyme? Starts at the membrane, goes to the nucleus, causes a response. Why not just do that? Why do you have to stimulate 3 different enzymes in the membrane, which pass to another enzyme, then to another one, and then to another one, and then to another one, and then to the nucleus? Why would you do it that way? It just doesn't make any sense. It's so overly complex. It's so unnecessarily complex. And the hallmark of design is not complexity, it's simplicity. Intelligent designers don't make things super complex. They make them usable and simple, right? It's so dumb. This is such a dumb argument.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, so if you would translate this into just modern day things, if you were to hire a plumber to get water to your newly built shower, and he will route that water line through your entire house to every room, from the ceiling to the floor and back, and then to your shower, you would fire this guy because he wouldn't be an intelligent designer. But this is how things in evolution work at times, because you can't get around a pre-existing design. You have to build on it, which means that sometimes things take ridiculous pathways. And the giraffe, the laryngeal nerve, which couldn't get past a blood vessel. That's how that happens. It's not intelligent.
Right. Yeah. Everything is co-opted or exapted. You have to build on what already exists. And so the fun thing is, in evolution, when you find like lineages where they lost something important, so they have to like remake that thing using other parts, that's when you get like really fun stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Or like for instance, trying to think of an example. Well, there was a fun example with like Tiktaalik. A close cousin of Tiktaalik called Kikictania was found, I think earlier this year, or maybe it was late last year. But the cool thing about Kikictania is it has these terrestrial adaptations like Tiktaalik has. So maybe it could do some movement on land, but then Kikictania went back to the water. So it is now having to readapt its fins, which are being more used for land movement, back into moving in the water. Now, why, if you're an intelligent designer, would you do that? Right? Or I just thought of another example. There is a dolphin that has electroreceptors, but the electroreceptors are hair follicles in which the hair has been removed. And so the nerves at the base of the hair follicle, or at the base of the hair, the cell from which the hair is produced, are where the receptors are. Right? So why would you do it that way? Why would you reuse the parts you already have instead of just making new parts? That just seems so much easier. And if you were a designer, I would imagine it would just be easier to use new things, but whatever.
My favorite example is the penguin. Why would you take away flight from a bird and then have it use its wings as flippers? Why would you do that if you already have a design which works perfectly fine in fish? Why would you do that? It's silly.
Yeah. Or the gulo.
What's the fossil called? I've not heard about that one.
Oh, sorry. I'll put it here in our side chat. It's called kick. I hope I'm spelling this correctly. I believe that is the correct spelling. I put it in our side chat. Oh, see. Or another example would be like the gulo pseudogene, right? So the gulo pseudogene, we know what it does in other mammals. It's not a question. We know what it does, right? It produces vitamin C. But ours is broken. And all haplorhines, so tarsiers, old and New World monkeys, and apes, it's broken. And of course, it's broken in us too, in the same exact way. Now, if you're an intelligent designer, why would you keep that gene in your creation if it's not doing anything? It's like I said, we know what it does, and we know what it's not doing in us, right? So why would you keep that in us if we know it's not doing anything? It's not like it has some secret function that's, maybe it's doing something. No, it's not. We can see its transcription abilities. It's not making transcripts above random noise. So if you're an intelligent designer, why would you do that? Why would you leave that in there? It makes no sense. That is a bottom-up process, not a top-down process. You're going to have things, you're going to have Rube Goldberg contraptions. You're going to have over-complexity, and that's what we expect from evolution, not from intelligent design. Okay, we can keep going.
I see a question in chat that I really want to know what the answer was to. Vestafreya says, I was on a software project for Boeing, and one of the aeronautical engineers asked how much did the software weigh when it was loaded onto the plane. I need to know what you answered. I really need to know what you answered.
Oh no.
That's my favorite question of the week.
Well, Peter, if it was soft, it probably didn't weigh very much.
Yeah, I mean, how does anyone get to a question like that? And the reason that I'm laughing about it is because I've talked to Eric Hernandez, and Eric Hernandez says the brain weighs, I don't know what it was, it's 3 pounds or 6 pounds, whatever, but a thought doesn't. Therefore, a thought doesn't originate in the brain. It's kind of a similar thing. It's and when one of his arguments for the soul is that there's music on the CD, but if you break the CD, the music doesn't fall out. But it's the same line of questioning. I love that question, honestly. Sorry.
Or one of the funniest things to ask, like in our language, is asking how many eggs are in a dozen.
Are you referring to a certain Dutch TV show?
Yeah. You remember?
That got someone famous.
To add some context, Jackson, like in our language, a dozen, the word for dozen is similar to the word for a box. So you ask somebody how many eggs are in a box, and or instead you ask how many eggs are in a dozen, and then somebody who doesn't know what dozen means, it means of course 12. Then they will ask, it depends on how big the box is. So I think
you have boxes with 10 and you have boxes with 6 eggs. That was the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right.
It got a blonde woman very famous. It's why we shouldn't constantly support stupid people. But yeah, never mind. Okay, continue.
Generate bottom-up explanations. But I think we're in a new day. We're looking at life in light of our own high-tech digital computing technologies and realizing these systems bear all the hallmarks of design. Let's start to look at life differently.
No, they really don't.
And I think looking at it from a bottom-up Darwinian approach is holding science back. We're starting to make predictions based on intelligent design. Some of our guys were the first people to predict that the non-coding regions of the genome previously identified as junk by the neo-Darwinians.
Stop. No, you did not. First of all, that's just a flat lie. Yeah, okay, that's wrong on so many levels. Because one, even when I think it was Ono first proposed the concept of junk DNA back in like the 60s.
It wasn't neo-Darwinian. It wasn't neo-Darwinian.
Right. First of all, people disagreed back then with that idea. They were like, no. Well, first of all, we should make a distinction. Junk DNA does not mean functionless. Junk DNA in its original conception was DNA that could have a function, right? Now, there is DNA that's like garbage. It doesn't do anything, like Gulo we mentioned. And there are lots of like processed pseudogenes and things like that again, don't do anything. But the concept of junk wasn't originally that all this DNA was functionless. And in fact, the Ono predicted that at least some of it had regulatory function. That was a prediction by Ono, the person who came up with the junk DNA concept. So no. Second, a lot of the people who attacked junk DNA from its inception argued that most, if not all, of the regions that were considered, quote, junk were actually functional. So even back in the 60s, there were people making this argument. Third, some of those regions do in fact have functions. As Ono said, some of those regions will have functions. They'll be regulatory regions or what have you. So, right, Smitty. So it's like stuff in the junk drawer. It could be useful potentially. Exactly right. That's literally how it was used by Ono. Yeah. And some of this stuff is functional. It is regulatory regions, or what's another one? It could be if a promoter region gets stuck at the front of it, then it could become functional. It could produce a functional protein. Yeah, that could happen. That does happen. So this idea that the Intelligent Design Discovery Institute predicted that that junk DNA had function, and that they were the ones who came up with this idea, and that all evolutionary biologists thought that junk DNA was functionless, is just insane. It's so ahistorical that you would have to know nothing about genetics and nothing about the history of biology to believe that that's true. And I do mean nothing. You would have to know nothing.
Junk
Go ahead.
DNA is mostly argued from like the perspective of a neutral drift, right?
Right.
Like if we didn't have drift, if the only thing was natural selection, then that would mean that the whole genome is subject to natural selection,
Right.
which would mean that none of it is junk, like
Right.
pretty much by definition. Like if it's subject to natural selection, then it must be doing something for the organism.
There's a formula, and I can't remember what the formula is, but it incorporates the size of the population, so whether or not a mutation is subject to selection depends in part on its selection coefficient. So how whether it's considered harmful or neutral relative to other alleles, as well as the size of the population. So in a small population, a mutation has to have a very large effect to be selectable. For natural selection to act on it, it has to have a very large effect. Now, the larger your population gets, the less of an effect that mutation has to have for natural selection to act on it, just per this formula. So what we should expect based on that, and what we do in fact see, is that organisms with extremely large populations should have very streamlined genomes. And that's true. Bacteria, archaea, and indeed like arthropods, nematodes, things like this, they have a lot of times very streamlined genomes, right? And that's what we expect. Their population is very large because a mutation doesn't have to have a big effect to be selectable. Contrast that with like mammals, for instance, and you get these, or reptiles or birds, whatever. You get these extremely like baroque genomes where you have lots of pseudogenes and lots of, regions that, maybe aren't functional. They're not regulatory. They're not protein coding. They really don't seem to have any function at all. You have oh my goodness, we talked about it in, and I'm forgetting what they're called, but we talked about this in the Gibbon's Tale, where you have like these regions that have a lot of like GC, what are they called? Like GC containing regions, but they don't do anything.
GC rich regions.
Yeah, GC rich regions, but I forget what the name for it is, but they don't do anything, right? They're not regulatory, and they're not protein coding. They don't do anything. And the reason is the populations of these animals are much smaller. So these mutations have to have much larger effects to be selected. So the reason that pseudogenes persist is that when mutations happen...
Oh, you mean GC enriched?
Well, yeah, GC enriched regions, whatever it was, but it's like they don't produce proteins, and they don't have regulatory functions. They just don't have any real function. I can't remember what they're called. There's a particular name for it. We talked about it. But anyways, the point is there has to be some major effect in these organisms with much smaller populations for the mutation to clear basically the selection, drift selection barrier, so that it's not just subject to genetic drift. It is in fact subject to natural selection, and it's much harder in animals with smaller populations, which is especially a problem for conservation efforts, right? If you have an organism which has a very small population, then it's relatively easy for genetic drift to spread harmful mutations around, because the mutation has to have a very big effect for it to be selectable. Okay. Anyway, I think I've hashed that point out enough. All right. Do you guys have anything you want to add before we move on?
No.
No.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
Are in fact importantly functional, and so there's looking at life as a design system is actually yielding insights into how life works.
It is not.
It's a new day.
You are just a liar.
You'll go with that?
Yeah, sort of. There's been big changes, let's put it this way. I think what we have determined is that Darwin created a 19th century local theory without looking at extreme cases that was reasonably successful for breeders, for the explanation of local characteristics like beak size or the growth of wings, but he entirely failed to explain what he thought he was explaining, the emergence of biological complexity on the species level or higher order levels. he wasn't able, it was a premature question to address an audience about the origin of species. He couldn't say anything about what he did not know, what he could not comprehend. And the fact that he did not know or could not comprehend these things is simply a reflection of the fact that we do not know or cannot comprehend those things in the 21st century. So the question addressed was widely premature in the 19th
So
century.
let's pause for a
It's
moment.
still
So when you go from a species to a phylum, all you do is speciation events, right? The only difference between calling a group of organisms a family and a phylum is just how many members you have in it, right? How much diversity in, morphological structure that there is within this group.
Yeah.
That's it. And even then, it's arbitrary, right? I mean, Placozoans have a single species. It's Trichoplaxid herons. One species for an entire phylum. There are no there are I've looked at papers arguments that there are multiple species of Placozoans, and well, sure, but as of right now, there's only one species of Placozoan, and it is just Trichoplaxid herons. But if you look at the fossil record of like the origin of a phylum, like chordates or like arthropods, they actually have these pretty decent fossil records where you can see the stepwise acquisition of characters. If you want to take chordates, for instance, because everyone's familiar with those, the very first chordates look very little more than like worms with a single fin running down their back. That's it. It looks like a swimming worm. Hycoichthyes, Pacaya, like little wormy guys. It's not until the end of the Cambrian that you get like bones. And then you get jaws in the Silurian. So later you get jaws. And then later than that, you get your split between ray fin fish and lobe fin fish in what did I say? No, sorry. You get jaws in the Ordovician. Then you get the split between ray fin fish and lobe fin fish in the Silurian. And then you get splits among those groups even later. It's a stepwise acquisition of characters. So if you want to continue down with like the lobe fin fish, you get limbs in the Devonian, giving rise to tetrapods. Then later in the Carboniferous, in the next period, you get amniotic eggs. Then in the Permian, you get the first hair for your mammals, and then it's always the stepwise acquisition that doesn't look like design unless God is like, I've been watching these lizards run around for 100 million years now. I think I'll give some of them some hair and some of them some feathers. I think that's what I'll do. Like, no, come on, no. None of us think that that's how that works. Not even Meyer thinks that's how that works. Anyway. Anything you guys want to add?
No.
Okay, moving on.
We're just learning the structure of intellectual inquiry necessary to understand something like the biological cell. And it's much harder a problem.
Just now? Where have you been?
Much harder.
David Gelernter, last word to you. Do you concur?
It is much harder. Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastically difficult problem. We'll solve it.
What is?
It's not going to be simple.
What is the problem?
David Gelernter, author most recently of The Tides of Consciousness. Thank
All
you.
right, Peter,
David
that's
Berlinski,
the end of it.
Author of...
All right, we did it, folks. We went through the video that is titled Mathematical Challenges to Darwin's Theory of Evolution, and we talked almost not at all about math.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. We did it. We beat them.
I can't recall one single mathematical challenge they put forward, let alone defend it.
Yeah, they
might
did
be
the
me.
waiting time problem, which was dumb. Like, that was it, though. That was the one time they talked about math.
Mhm.
And the
it
waiting
was,
time...
it was dumb. It was dumb spelled as D-U-M.
D-U-M, yeah.
Not D-U-M-B, but just D-U-M.
Yep, it was just dumb. That was it. That was the one time they mentioned math. They spent a lot of time talking about consciousness, which had nothing to do with anything. They talked about Darwin's theory is beautiful, and then they looked like they wanted to strangle David Gelernter when he said that. His whole tirade about putting together mice and whatever else, because he liked sheep. Wasn't that what he said? He said, "I like sheep." Okay, well, we did it. This video has, what is it, like over 1 million views, something like that. Yeah, it's an insane number. Hold on, I'll verify. 3.3 million views, but the comments are turned off. Okay, so we know how that went.
How long is this video?
It's an hour. It's an hour-long video.
Yep.
3.3 million views for an hour-long video that has math in the title, but no math.
Is this video advertised? Like,
I've seen the video on multiple channels, so it might be that it got even more views. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think people clip it and put like individual sentences or something on other channels.
Oh,
they like, you know, the bit.
Hold on, Jackson. Those are creationists. You know that copyright doesn't exist in creationism, right? So you can copy an entire video, put it on your channel, and pretend it's your content.
Answers in Genesis would disagree. Answers in Genesis would very much disagree with that statement.
Okay. A little addendum. So we have an amendment on that. I like that. So copyright only exists if non-creationists are going to post creationist videos in their entirety, or even clips of them.
That's fair.
So copyright only comes into place when you're talking with the filthy, hell-bound evolutionists. That's why they invented copyright. Anyway.
Yeah.
So for our next video, I have taken the liberty of removing the whole Mozart concert that it starts off with. So we had a brief introduction of the people on screen. I don't think that a lot of people in our community aren't familiar with the people on screen. We have Meyer, who we've just seen in this video. Then we have the abominable John Lennox. And then the car mechanic from the intro, Michael Behe. So he ought to be good.
Lennox is a mathematician. Also. So they basically replaced Berlinski with with Lennox.
Yeah.
Meyer the philosopher, Lennox the mathematician, and Behe the biochemist.
Yeah, and we shall not body shame, but by replacing Berlinski with Lennox, they brought a little bit more weight to the conversation.
I think, you know, he's not wearing the biker outfit, so it's fine.
Yeah, at least he has style. He has style, doesn't he? He has more style. He
does have more style. That's true.
He's got
I would like to point out that we still don't have any biologists in this group. Not one. Mm-hmm. We have a biochemist, so we've supplanted a computer scientist for a chemist, which is not a step in the right direction. It's like a horizontal step in the wrong direction. Again, another mathematician, and then a philosopher.
You underestimate chemists. You underestimate chemists. It's sadly that he passed away just before he got to prove his findings.
Wait, who did?
We all recall our famous and loved around the world.
Oh, John Morris Pendleton?
John Morris Pendleton, the chemist.
Oh my God.
Car mechanic. And so
who found the pterodactyl?
Maybe that's where Behe got the idea from, because Pendleton was a chemist, but he was also a car mechanic, which is why he ended up as a car mechanic in your intro.
Ah. Yes.
God moves in mysterious ways, Jackson. You know that?
God moves in delirious ways, Peter.
Okay.
That's my statement.
We've got about half an hour. Want to start it off? See what these guys have?
Let's do it.
Okay. This is going to be cringe. Okay.
Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. A professor of biochemistry at Lehigh University, Michael Behe holds an undergraduate degree from Drexel and a doctorate in biochemistry from Penn.
I have to say it. I produce, for Arnra, I produce the Reading Joseph's Myth. Every time someone now says Lehigh University, I always think, do they get into a bucket with golden plates and stones to get their wisdom. This Lehi is a character mentioned in the Book of Mormon a lot. Sorry.
Also, before I think you paused at a good place. Michael Behe, the university where he works, pretty much the whole science department has like signed a statement saying they don't agree with his views. Just in case anyone forgot that happened, because nobody else agrees with him, and they all think he's a crank. Just throwing that out there. That not even the scientists he works with take him seriously. Just want to put that in perspective.
I am not surprised.
Oh, Jake Nelson for $20. Oh, thank you. Says only 7 likes. Anyone who hasn't hit like is a Jack A ****. Well, thank you very much, Jake Nelson. That's very kind of you.
It is.
Okay, yeah, we can keep going.
He's the author of a number of books, including Darwin's Black Box. Emeritus Professor of Mathematics at Oxford, John Lennox grew up in Northern Ireland, earned his undergraduate degree from Emmanuel College, Cambridge, and then went on to earn not 1 and not 2, but 3 doctorates in an academic career of astounding distinction. Dr. Lennox is the author of many books, including the 2019 volume, Can Science Explain
So he's
Everything?
3 times not a doctorate of biology, is what I just heard. Am I correct? He's 3 times not a doctor of biology.
Mm-hmm.
We
just want to make sure.
We could also say that he's 1 doctorate away from being Kent Hovind. I mean, if he gets 1 honorary doctorate, he's there. He's arrived.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
Geophysics at Whitworth College. Stephen Meyer is now a fellow at the Discovery Institute. He holds a doctorate of the philosophy of science from Cambridge. Dr. Meyer has published...
Wow.
Can I say that I like that title? What are you? I'm a fellow. I'm a fellow at the Discovery Institute. Just a fellow? Yeah, just an ordinary fellow.
He's a funny fellow.
Yeah.
Published, again, many books, including his 2013 volume on the fossil record, Darwin's Doubt.
He's only published 3 books.
Michael, John, and Steve.
He hasn't published many books. There's only 3.
First question. Darwin versus Einstein. Einstein publishes The Special Theory of Relativity in 1905, and in the 12-ish decades since that publication, one observation after another has tended to confirm his work. Just a decade ago, scientists found clocks on satellites in elliptical orbits.
Much like
just
Darwin.
As Einstein would have predicted.
It's like Darwin's theory, right?
Crudely, Einstein has become easier and easier to believe. Okay. Darwin publishes On the Origin of the Species in 1859.
Oh no, here we go. Hot take.
As was true of Einstein, also of Darwin, has he become easier and easier to believe? Michael?
No, the opposite.
The opposite. John?
Stephen? Theory has been progressively disconfirmed by multiple observations in multiple subdisciplines of biology.
All right.
All right, so let's pause for a moment. Let's pause. Let's just pause for one brief moment. I could spend the next 20 minutes talking about why all 3 of them are colossal idiots. But let's just pause for a second. I just want to make one observation. Do you guys know what the theory of how coral reefs form is? Nestle, I'm pretty sure you do. Peter, are you aware of the?
I'm familiar. Yes.
Yeah. Are you aware of the theory of how coral reefs form?
Yes. Do I need to answer that,
Peter?
I'm not. So please explain.
So with coral reefs, there was this idea back in Darwin's day, or when he was a younger man, that coral reefs formed on the mouths of volcanoes, on the rim of a volcano as it was like rising up. This was an idea that Charles Lyell had proposed. Well, Darwin sailed around the world, saw a bunch of coral reefs, took lots of measurements, and said, that doesn't seem to make sense. It seems rather that as islands are sinking, coral reefs are forming on the sides and pushing themselves upwards towards the light to stay in the photic zone as the island sinks. And this accorded with the data. And in fact, Charles Lyell changed his mind and said, Darwin, you're right. That does seem to accord better with the data than my view. Do you know the theory of coral reef formation we still use? Now, obviously with modifications, because we've learned more, but it's still Darwin's idea. Darwin was the person who proposed this idea of coral reefs that we still use to this day. That came from him. And also, that was an idea he came up with before he came up with evolution, right? So back in, I think it was the 1840s was when he came up with his coral reef theory. Yes, Dalton, he does look like he just took a huge drag from his vape.
Yeah, the moment you read that particular comment, it's impossible to unsee it.
It's so good. It's so well timed.
It is.
You can't unsee it. Yeah, no. It's very true. Oh man. Now Darwin, of course, got his theory or proposed his theory based on, in part, an analogy. So the very first chapter of Origin was an analogy. He looked at artificial selection and said, if we can wreak these changes in a human lifetime, imagine what natural selection can do, in many, many lifetimes. And now, of course, natural selection is the process by which, diseases, parasites, starvation, dehydration, etc., eliminate individuals from a population. Now, we know that variations happen. Variations confer the ability to survive better or worse in an environment, and the natural selection, so the environment acts on that. Diseases wipe out individuals, or predators do, or maybe accidents happen too, which also wipe out individuals. But regardless, and also individuals have to compete for mates, right? That's also a Darwin idea. Of course, he wasn't the first one to have that, but that figures into sexual selection also. So that's why elephant seals are so big, and why peacocks have the very colorful train, is to compete for females. Darwin looked at biogeography, so the biogeographic pattern of organisms on islands, for instance, accords with evolution, does not accord with special creation. The idea that plants in the Arctic and also on high mountains, the reason that they live in those places is the Ice Age. These plants moved down southward from the Arctic and then have ended up on these high mountains as the ice sheets retreated. That's in accord with evolution. The fossil record, which Darwin had access, very small access to in his day, accords with evolution, because we have transitional fossils of not just of big groups, so Archaeopteryx linking reptiles with birds, but actual species to species transitions for numerous organisms that also accords with evolution. These are all facts, and of course the nested hierarchy of organisms, which also displays descent with modification. All of these things together. So you have observational evidence of natural selection and sexual selection and all the other mechanisms. So we have direct observation, and then we can apply these concepts to extant diversity, to the fossil record, and we see that they all line up with each other. All of these ideas work together. Okay, that all confirms evolution. So when these guys, who are not biologists, I hasten to say again, say, oh, Darwin's only gotten harder to confirm, they're just idiots. They're just idiots. They're lying. They're being given money to say this. Maybe they believe it, and the money is just a nice bonus. I don't know. But they're just wrong. Do you guys want to add anything?
I don't know.
Oh, sorry, I just disconnected from the Hangout. So
welcome back.
Your profile picture is gone. That's I don't know.
Yeah, I use a different browser now, so it's yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
Well, at any rate, all right. Let's keep on keeping on.
Okay.
three of you come out swinging. Gentlemen, you're about to take a layman through
A swing
three
and a miss.
problems with Darwin that the last few decades have turned up. Problem one, Stephen, this is for you. Feel free to join
Here we
in,
go.
but this one for Stephen particularly. The fossil
Here we
record.
go.
The
Oh my
Cambrian,
goodness.
Cambrian, how's it pronounced? In the
Either
first
way,
one?
yeah.
All right. The Cambrian or the Cambrian explosion. What was it, and why is it a problem for Darwin?
It was a problem that Darwin
We're not
himself
doing
knew
this.
about in 1859.
We're not doing this again. We're just going to let him
Cambrian
speak.
explosion is refers to an event in the history of life in which the major groups of animal forms, the new body plans that are exemplified by the largest categories of different types of animals.
Nope, that's not what that means.
Very abruptly in the fossil record, with no
they don't.
discernible connection to ancestral
also not true.
precursors or intermediates in the lower Precambrian strata. And this
Nope.
pattern of abrupt appearance of the major groups of organisms, of biological or morphological innovation, as it's called, recurs up and down the sedimentary rock column. The first
Nope, it doesn't.
winged insects, the first dinosaurs,
Nope.
the first birds,
Nope.
the first mammals,
Nope.
the first flowering plants.
Mammals,
There are
mammals.
Wrong.
multiple instances of this type of abrupt appearance. And so the fossil record looks very different than Darwin anticipated that it
Who
would
are
look.
the
He
You know what?
depicted the history of
Actually,
life as a great
pause.
branching tree where the
Actually, I'm sorry. Since he said it, let's bring it up again. Stephen Meyer, famous non-paleontologist, said the first mammals appeared in the Eocene. The Eocene, which lasted, chat, from 56 to 34 million years ago. The first... What'd you say, Nestling?
Morgan Nugadan is saying, like, am I just a joke to you? Yes.
Yes.
Stephen Meyer thinks every fossil is a joke.
Jeremiah, which is a placental mammal, was from 160 million years ago. 160 million years ago. And he says the first mammals appeared in the Eocene. Now, I've had a bunch of conversations with people, including Jonathan McClatchy, because he is a glutton for punishment, in which people try to defend Meyer by saying, oh, he meant to say crown orders of placental mammals, and that's wrong too. There were crown primates in the Paleocene. There were crown carnivorans in the Paleocene. There are there are crown crown placentals. There are like stem proboscideans and stem cetaceans in the Paleocene. So we have actual we have orders of placental mammals in the preceding period, and we have like stem primates at the Cretaceous boundary, like Purgatorius, and there are other placental mammals like Protungulatum and other things like that, which are also in late Cretaceous. So it's so bafflingly wrong for him to say that. The first dinosaurs appeared, the very first dinosaurs appeared about 235 million years ago in the fossil record. The first diapsids in the fossil record appeared about 320 million years ago. So there's about 90 million years of evolutionary history between the first diapsids and the first dinosaurs. The first flowering plants are one where there's a bit of a debate, but there are a bunch of stem angiosperms like the Bennettitales and Gigantopteriales and some other ones, which are all like stem.
Glossopteriales or something like that.
That's what it is. The Glossopteriales, Pentoxylales, all those other guys, which are all stem angiosperms. So again, they didn't come out of nowhere. It's so bad. He wrote that paper with Gunter Beckley, and Beckley responded, and well, I think I've mentioned this before, but his response was the same one that McClatchy provided, which again is wrong. Crown placental mammals did not originate in the Eocene. That's still wrong. Oh, also dinosaur morphs are present in the early Triassic before the first dinosaurs. So non-dinosaurs, but very closely related to dinosaurs, are present before the dinosaurs were.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to say the dinosaurs appeared out of nowhere, like what do you mean when you say that? Go ahead, Nestle.
And also the first true dinosaurs are like really weird. Like you have Herrerasaurus, which may be a dinosaur, or it may just not be a dinosaur.
Right.
And also you have things that are just more closely related to the sauropods, which were previously considered to be actually theropods, like the Eoraptor. Like when the Eoraptor was first discovered, it was thought to be an early theropod, but now it seems to be an early sauropod, because during that time the relationships were really close, and the differences between the two are not very easily determined. So yeah, it's
Boreolestes is another one, another carnivore that's actually a sauropodomorph.
Yes.
So yeah. It's like, in the case of the Cambrian, at least he can say like there are some gaps that we're probably never going to fill just because of how small and squishy these things are. But like he's trying to argue that the mammals came out of nowhere is bonkers. It is insane.
Yeah.
It's like he's not even trying.
What's the first stage of the Cambrian called again? Like you have
the Timotion.
The motion?
Yeah, I think it's the motion.
Hold on, I need to confirm. I think it has a different name, like the first, maybe a different period. I'm not period, but a different.
There's also, what is it called, like the Manichaean?
The Fortunian. I meant the Fortunian.
The
like
Fortunian,
okay. Like during that time, we don't have a lot of Lagerstaten, I think. Like most that we have is like these small shelly fauna during that time. So it's and I do expect that like relatives of like the Anomalocarids, and also maybe early arthropods were perhaps already around back then, but we don't have their fossils because they were not mineralized.
Right.
You only have like the shells of early mollusks and such during that time. So yeah.
Yep. I'm sorry we stopped him, but he said something that wasn't Cambrian related, so I felt the need to jump in. If he just went on about the Cambrian, we've already covered that innumerable times, so we're not doing that again. All right, let's keep going.
The forms of life we see today emerged gradually from one or very few simple forms at the base of the tree, at the trunk of the tree. But instead what we see, it looks more like a lawn or perhaps an orchard of separate trees where the major groups of organisms appear abruptly without connections to those ancestral precursor forms.
So the Cambrian explosion was the first that got noticed. As you say, Darwin himself noticed that this was a problem, but this is from my reading, add to it or correct me. As I've got it, the record shows one abrupt meaning a few million years, but in the geologic time, that's the blink of an eye, one abrupt event after another. Photosynthesis, just all of a sudden it's there. The Avalon explosion, the great Ordovician biodiversification event, whatever that
Wait
may
a second.
have been.
Hold on, pause. That's such a bad example because the Ordovician biodiversification event, Gobi, started in the late Cambrian. The diversity increase that led to Gobi started in the late Cambrian and went successively for like millions of years. You can see a gradual buildup, right? And there are periods, of course, where you see like, jumps, but it's overall a buildup over like tens of millions of years. That's such a bad example. Again, the Avalon is one where you can say like, oh, well, we don't have things prior to it because small, soft, squishy things. But the fun thing about that is the organisms which are present, like Charnia, in the Avalon explosion are like stem eumetazoans. So very, very primitive animals. So don't you think it's weird, guys, that like very, very primitive animals show up before the first like bilaterians, which then show up before the like all the crown bilaterian groups? Isn't that weird? Isn't it weird how they never talk about that? How they just kind of walk right past it?
Too transitional, Jackson.
It's too transitional to be transitional. They're such hacks. They are such absolute hacks.
Yeah, we're almost getting at the end of the 2 hours.
Yeah, I guess we can pause. Yeah, we can pause. We'll end it for today. All right.
Go watch Professor Dave's video. It will be a much more comprehensive breakdown of this.
Yes, which I got to. I predominantly wrote the paleontology stuff for Professor Dave's Stephen Meyer Debunk. Dave wrote most of the genetic stuff, and also well, Dave wrote most of the genetic stuff for that one, but I wrote most of the paleontology stuff. And then watch that one, watch the Stephen Meyer debunk, and then watch the Beckley debunk, which I wrote with I co-wrote that with Erica Gutsick Gibbon. And then I do know Professor Dave is gonna, I don't know when it's coming out, but Dr. Dan Stern Cardinal and I co-wrote another Beckley response. And again, I wrote most of the paleontology stuff, and Dan wrote the genetic stuff. So there should be a second, or a Beckley response coming out, a second Beckley response, and I'm very excited for it because we get to smash hard on both of them again, on both Meyer and Beckley, because they're idiots. So yes, watch Professor Dave. He makes good videos. Can't recommend highly enough. What's going on for you guys?
I've been busy with other stuff, but for the most part, been doing fine.
Good. What about you, Peter? You're muted.
Sorry, I've been busy too. On Monday, on my channel, I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. Josh Bowen.
Nice.
And so he's actually a real doctor and knows a lot about predominantly the Old Testament. I'm probably going to ask him whether or not slavery is endorsed in the Bible, because no one's ever asked him that, I think. But no, I'm really excited. My co-host Lilith is already fangirling for an entire week because she gets to co-host this particular conversation. And so people will ask why I won't have Megan on, his wife, because both they are digital Hammurabi. The reason for that is another good friend of mine, Jefferson Spatchcock, who's been on this channel once before. He wanted to have a conversation with both Dr. Josh and Megan, and so I didn't see, because Dr. Josh DM'd me and said, "Hey, can I come on your channel to have a chat?" And so that to me already was blowing me away. But I didn't want to infringe on Jefferson's idea, wanting to have a chat with both of them. So we're sticking with just Dr. Josh. We may have the odd Kent Hovind pop up during the conversation. Who knows? Because there is still, I think it's on TikTok, Kent Hovind unofficial. A brilliant parody.
He's too good at it. He's too good.
He could fool people if he's not on screen. He could fool people that he actually is Kent Hovind. He's that good.
Yeah. Very good.
The conversation with on Jefferson's channel, which I'm going to produce. I also produce for Jefferson. That is being set up at the moment. Then I have a young Earth creationist called P-Town, who has been on my channel already. Dr. Josh also wanted to have a conversation with him, and so we still have this show. If you want to have a conversation, not a debate, then we have the show for you, which is titled Second Opinions, because that's the book that Hovind seems to mention a lot, and I thought that would be a good title to have people who are not part of our channel having the ability to have a conversation, and we will produce all of that. So that's coming over there. Then, as I mentioned earlier, wherever I can, I'm going to assist McKinnon Mitchell in his documentary about Greg Locke. If there's anything I can help him with, obviously that is going to happen. And then on Saturday, I'm producing Blasphemer's Bible on Ross channel, which is always a great thing to do. And on Sunday, we do the exact same thing with the Book of Mormon, which is called Reading Joseph's Myth. And then Sunday, a week from now, I will be back on Discord. I just recently did an AMA, which also was great fun to do. I signed up for an hour and a half and ended up doing an AMA for 3.5 hours, because it was fun. I had great people coming up asking questions people have never asked me. So that was an awful lot of fun.
You know,
to do.
Peter, if I get to 10,000 subscribers, I'll do an AMA. How about that? From our 10,000 subscriber party, we'll do an AMA. That sounds fun.
That is a good thing. I mean, but are you on Discord, by the way?
Technically, yes. I don't check it very often, though.
If
Which
you
is
want,
why I think I made Dapper mad, because I
Yeah, so I did the AMA on the politics Discord server, which is predominantly theist Discord server. If you want to do an AMA there, I'll probably be able to help set that up.
I don't know. I'd probably do it here on YouTube.
Yeah, we can stream it to your channel. That's not a problem. I did the same thing.
Oh, okay,
I just didn't stream it to my regular channel. I streamed it to the backup channel, which is gonna go for some more if people want to check it out. If you've got 3.5 hours to spare. But
I got you.
I had a ton of fun.
I want to thank Jake Nelson for $10 just because you deserve it, Jackson. Keep doing what you do. Thank you very much, Jake Nelson. You're too kind. Thank you.
And I fully agree with
yes,
Jake
Dalton's
Nelson.
right. I do have one. I just don't use it very often. Dalton was I can't remember who it was who told me, but Dalton went into I think he'd been upset by something, and so he went into a Discord while everyone was talking, and he like insulted everyone and then just left immediately after.
I do have to point out, Dalton, phrasing. People who might not be listening to the conversation just see your comment might be thinking entirely different things than you're alluding to here, knowing that Jackson has one. And how do you know that?
I do.
Now I threw Jackson
That's
off.
right. So we just put out the lava lizard's tail. I finally did it. I finally had time to put it out. So you're welcome, everybody. So that's out now. The next video in the ancestor's tale is the Galapagos finch's tail. So that's markedly shorter than the lava lizard's tail. So I do have a Discord. I'm terrible about checking it, and I made Dapper mad because the conversation between us and Jeremy Spry, which we had on Dapper's channel, which he said I could stream, I could put it on my channel. I just forgot to do that. And if you're, although I feel like we probably share most of our audience, right? I feel like if people watch me, they probably watch Dapper too, so they've probably seen. I don't know. At any rate, you guys should go watch that. But we set that up on Discord, and I kept forgetting to check it. And Dapper was like, "Jackson, the date's coming up for it. Are you good to do on that date?" And so, I'm just bad about it.
I think you and I share one thing, and that is that Discord isn't our favorite platform. I think it's a horrible platform. A lot of people use it.
I don't have any problems. I don't have problems with it. I'm already, Twitter is already the place where I get my messages, or email. You could just email me. And so having to check another thing, I just forget about it. I can't, I'm not like I can do Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat and all that. Like I don't, I'm very low tech. So
it's also easier if people want to get in touch with me. I usually say DM me on Twitter. My DMs are open. It's the fastest way to get in touch because I basically see that all day. I have Twitter pulled up on one monitor. Even when I'm working, I can see if people are messaging me. And because of the work that I do, I just forget to check Discord. It's not intentional, but I just forget.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair.
Although
at any rate,
there are some upsides to the platform. As I said, I do the bi-weekly show where people can come convince us whether or not a God exists. The title of that we stole from Dawkins. It's called The Theist Helpline. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to theisthelpline.com. Another thing that I wanted to promote is because all of us pretty much have at some point encountered the character that is Darth Dawkins. I'm pretty sure you have too,
Yeah.
Jackson. So,
Yeah,
well,
he rage
here's the
quit
thing.
on the one stream I was on.
Here's the thing. There is a new website called darthdawkins.com. You go there, you can order the original Darth Dawkins squeaky toy, so you can argue as Darth Dawkins. And so, from what I know, the proceeds are going to go to some kind of charity or something. So, if you want your own Darth Dawkins squeaky toy, order it on darthdawkins.com, which is done by my dear friend Jail Warden.
One of my favorite videos ever was like, it's called Darth Frog, and you have this. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
If you look up on YouTube, Darth Frog, you see the video of the desert rain toad. It's a clip originally taken from a documentary where you have this narrator saying like, "Oh, it sounds like a dog toy," but instead of the original sound, it makes Darth noises.
Fun fact about rain frogs is one of the professors I work for he studies rain frogs, and he even named one Breviceps umbellinunga. So one of my coworkers watches this stream, and they're all familiar with Breviceps umbellinunga now because he's adorable. All right. Well, anyways, all right. We've been going past the 2-hour mark. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Peter, for hosting, and thank you, Nestle, for being here. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
And we are going to sign off. We'll see all of you next Thursday. Bye.
See you next week. Bye-bye.